That day in high school biology class stands out in Erica Johnson's mind even though it has been about 20 years. The class was doing experiments with the common HeLa cell line, and the teacher was guiding them along. Henrietta Lacks was Johnson's mother, and her tissue was used to create the cell line. Johnson reflected, "This is my great-grandmother I'm holding in my hand." Something very strange had happened. Lacks's birthday is August 1, 1920, making her 102 years old now. Poor African-American farmer and mother of 5 Henrietta Lacks went to the Johns Hopkins Hospital in 1951 because it was one of the few facilities in Maryland that accepted black patients. Henrietta Lacks went to the doctor because she was experiencing random bleeding and pain in her groin, and she was concerned that it would affect her ability to do her job. Doctors discovered a large malignant tumor on Henrietta's cervix after she visited her gynecologist, Dr. Howard Jones, so she began undergoing radium treatments for cervical cancer, which back then was the best medical treatment available for this terrible disease. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be transported back in time to a story of Henrietta Lacks, a woman whose name you may not know, but whose impact on the world of medicine is undeniable. Her journey is one of tragedy and triumph, of scientific discovery and ethical dilemmas, and of the resilience of the human spirit. Join us as we uncover the life of Henrietta Lacks and the lasting impact her immortal cells have had on the world of medicine. And if you're a history buff who is always on the hunt for the next captivating tale, then be sure to like and subscribe to the Hallmark History Channel, where every video is a journey through time and a window into the past. At the same time as she was receiving treatment, a sample of her cancer cells was sent to Dr. George Gay's nearby tissue lab for analysis. Cancer and virus researcher Dr. Gay had been collecting cells from patients at the Johns Hopkins Hospital with cervical cancer for years, but all of the samples died quickly in his lab except for one, Henrietta Lacks. Rather than perish, Henrietta Lacks cells would duplicate every 24 hours. Amazingly, the cells from Henrietta Lacks survived and could sprout again and again, which means that there were now nearly an unlimited number of these excellent cells surviving if used correctly, which could lead to a cure for virtually any disease. These cells were initially tested against polio, and unlike most cells, they survived the infection. Due to this breakthrough, Henrietta cells were used in experiments to develop a vaccine against polio, one of the leading causes of death among children in the early 20th century. In addition to curing polio, Henrietta Lacks' cells were used to develop the first human-animal hybrids in 1965, vaccines against the human papillomavirus, which themselves saved the lives of millions, advances in hygiene, and a deeper understanding of cells. As much as 50 million metric tons of her cells have been grown and are currently being used in the search for treatments and vaccines against diseases like Ebola, cancer, and typhoid. Since Henrietta Lacks passed away just weeks after her care, her cells were taken without her consent, and her family learned of her sacrifice for medical science only 20 years after her death. The researcher disseminated them to a large scientific community, and they became indispensable to the field of biological study. HeLa cells have been used in groundbreaking research that has shaped modern medicine in many areas, including cancer, immunology, and infectious disease. Their most recent application was in the creation of vaccines against COVID-19. The racism that permeates U.S. healthcare and research institutions is illustrated by the Henrietta Lacks case. A woman of color, Lacks was not white. Some hospitals, like the one where her cells were collected, discriminated against black patients. None of the biotech or other companies that used her cells gave anything to her family. Medical professionals continued to release Lacks's name, medical records, and even the genome of her cells decades after her death, all without first obtaining permission from her family. Following public outcry, the genome was swiftly removed. Subsequently, the Lacks family and the U.S. National Institutes of Health, NIH, came to an agreement to approve the release of the genome of a different HeLa line, and it was published in Nature 1. Extraordinary events in 2020, such as the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement for racial justice and the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on communities of color, have compelled scientists to address historical injustices. Some people have called for a decrease in, or even a total ban on, the use of HeLa cells in scientific studies. Due to the cells being taken without Lacks's permission, it is argued that their use is unethical and serves to further perpetuate injustice, even though this was legal at the time. The majority of the Lacks family, however, is opposed to this. In her centennial year, numerous Henrietta Lacks descendants are spearheading a new initiative called #HeLa100, which encourages people to celebrate her life and legacy rather than mourn her passing. Jerry Lacks Y, her granddaughter, said, "I want scientists to acknowledge that HeLa cells came from an African American woman who was flesh and blood, who had a family, and who had a story. Given that Lacks died from cancer, it is fitting that her grandson, Alfred Lacks Carter, should claim the greatest contribution of HeLa cells to cancer research." Others have told him that they were able to have children thanks to in vitro fertilization, a process made possible by the use of HeLa cells. He says that despite being mistreated, they are helping to improve society. Also, they do this for people of all ethnic backgrounds. Over the past decade, the Lacks family and scientists have developed stronger criteria for using these rare artifacts. But considerable work remains. Prioritize consent. Francis Collins, director of the National Institutes of Health, has suggested that the scientific community reconsider the common rule, which protects human subjects in government-funded research too. This modification requires agreement from anybody before using biological samples in research, even if they are de-identified from the person they were collected from. The common rule and consent problem should be reviewed since previous attempts failed in 2017. Researchers worried this would add work. But compromise is needed. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services proposed several other adjustments while updating the common rule. Scientists and the public should discuss biospecimen consent separately and thoroughly. Given that systematic racism still continues now, which persisted at the time Lacks's cells were extracted, a second, independent step must be made to acknowledge and remedy the inequities that are baked into basic research. In light of racial injustice, some HeLa cell researchers believe they should pay. A University of California, San Diego lab and a UK biomedical company have donated to Rebecca Skloot's 2010 Henrietta Lacks Foundation. The organization grants descendants of Lacks and other people whose remains were illegally utilized for research. Organizations and scholars should consider how their work contributes to historical injustices. They must consider how to apologize. COVID-19, which disproportionately affects Black people in several nations, offers a potential for more equal research. To give back, researchers should help close the gap and discover why Black individuals are more affected by the disease. Scientists must also work with underprivileged groups to provide vaccines, which may be derived from HeLa cells. Lacks's cells being taken during a different consent era will never justify what happened. We must accept the wrongs of past and present generations. Start enforcing justice. And there you have it, the incredible story of Henrietta Lacks. From the depths of tragedy to the heights of scientific discovery, her story is a testament to the power of the human spirit and the potential for progress. And now, as we bring this video to a close, we invite you to join us again on our next adventure through history. Subscribe to the Hallmark History Channel, where every video is a unique and captivating tale of the past, and be sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss a beat. Until next time, farewell, and stay curious.